Squirro originally is an insight engine. As such, we've been recognized by Forrester Gartner as one of the leaders in that domain. Gartner calls us the visionary in that domain. With the advent of what came now with these large language models, as everybody probably of the audience knows, it came this idea of combining search with an LLM to do what is called retrieval augmented generation. That is in itself a novel topic, doesn't exist barely for more than 8, 9, 10 months or so. And we're a leading contender in that because we have built insights engines for the last 10 years, have integrated machine learning techniques of all shapes, forms, and sizes for the last 10 years. So it is was for us, and is for us pretty straightforward process, integrating large language models to provide one of the leading retrieval augmented generation stacks. With that, we are able to serve customers in various domains. Obviously, the straightforward kind of like RAG, I chat with my data case. That said, I do sincerely think that chat is a bit overrated. Everybody thinks chat today, but I always make that quip. Some 20 years ago, my team and I created what became Switzerland's largest web property. We digitized the whole of the yellow page and white page space and created the largest local directory service in Switzerland at the time. My average query length was 1.23 keywords. That is not enough to say restaurant Singapore, for an example. You can either say Singapore rest, sure, maybe Hong Kong thinks that, but that's not the truth. Or you can say restaurant Sing. No, I don't want a karaoke shop. I want a restaurant in Singapore. And 20 years on, all the type ahead stuff, which is nothing else than try to make query expansion and query precision on. I recently had one of the product owners of Google Search here, and he told me that actually Google today sees 3.4 as sort of the average query length. Now, that is not a full sentence, Harry. So if people haven't been able to formulate full sentences for the full last 20 years, how on earth shall they be suddenly in a position to continuously provide good and complex prompts? I just don't buy that. So chat, while it's all the rage at the moment, is overrated. Now, that said, to put away this combination of technologies that you described as retrieval augmented generation would be foolish. Because if you look at any company, big or small, any company today, if you look at it from a Drucker's value chain kind of like perspective, where you have stuff coming into the company, supply, stuff being done with stuff, production, and then stuff being sold and sales, and then you have some support processes, that sort of simplified version of the value chain, as described by Michael Porter. If you take a step back and look through an IT angle at this, it's a collection of IT boxes that don't talk to each other. What you have now here is the first time in 30 years I've been doing this, that you have an ability that you can interconnect these different boxes. Because who says that it's a human that chats with a machine? Why can't the machine chat with a machine? And in the moment you think this through, you have a whole roster of additional and other applications. What you will need a bit more refined solutions than that standard RAG. Take a bit of vectorization, take a bit of LangChain, take a bit of a LLM, and you're done. That's not sufficient in any enterprise anyway, but surely not for these type of cases. So for the past 12 months, we've been continuously expanding our enterprise-ready platform to incorporate additional elements. We call that RAG+++, to make it truly enterprise-grade generative AI. And that in itself is transformative. The tectonic shifts that we're going to see in and around this type of applications will be at least as big as the advent of what was referred to the internet back in the late 90s, where all of us who consumed music had to resort to vinyl LPs or later on to compact discs, all long gone, because we all consume music now digitally. That disintermediation and reintermediation of entire industries because of the internet, music is just one example, will happen here with this type of generative AI technologies. You will see a massive rethink of value chains inside companies, but also within and in between companies. And we want to continue to be a core player in that. That's it.
Oh, that's all right. So looking ahead to maybe H2, 2025 and beyond, just where do you see the sort of transformative potential of AI, and how can it impact companies operating in the financial sector and beyond?
Mm-hmm. I go back to this support value chain diagram, right? Any company, big or small, whether it's in financial services or whether it's in industrial applications or whatever else, all of them are a collection of IT boxes. If the company has a history of acquiring other companies, it's even a bigger zoo of IT boxes. So the first thing you're going to see is very specific applications in very specific domains within such a company. In financial services, as an example, the whole call center support, internal customer support, external customer support, help desk stuff. Why? Because you effectively will be able to automate a good chunk of such answers. And we have been doing this for a while now, and the unit economics are phenomenal. We have taken down first level support resolution rates, by the say improved first level customer support resolution rates by 40-50%. What that means is it doesn't go to the more expensive second level. That in itself pays for any of these projects twice over. If you then look at the fact that you can shrink wrap resolution times, mean time to resolution, and shrink wrap that by another 30-40%, it becomes game changing. One example. And now you go into a company and look at any part of a company where you have this intersection of multiple systems. Customer support typically is on the receiving end of something gone wrong, not in a single system, but in a multitude of systems. The customer support folks, or the internal, as an example, IT support folks, then need to go through various systems to figure out what happened and what's the solution. A good chunk of that you can automate, because if you look at the distribution of such tickets, they all follow a pattern of within the first 20%, there is 80% of the volume, and then you have a long chain, a long tail kind of like a situation. But the key element of it, it's a lot of repeat. It might be formulated differently, the ticket by me or by you, Harry, but it is describing the same situation. A good chunk of that you can automate away. So the first piece you're going to see is that a lot of people will deploy it there. The second piece, what you're going to see in 25 is disappointment. What I see today in the marketplace is that a lot of people, because it's relatively easy to get going, try to build this stuff themselves. Right? Take a bit of a vector database, take a bit of a LangChain type open source library, take a bit of a commercially available LLM, and you think you can build your own retrieval augmented generation stack. But that's not the case. Just two examples why that's not that easy as many people think. First, while the pilot maybe only covers, a couple of 10,000 documents, any operational deployment will have to cover millions of documents. And this is not a linear scaling thing. This is an exponential situation. If you don't have experience in doing that at scale, you're going to pay a price for that. And while money can buy a ton of stuff, one thing you can't buy with money, you can't buy time. So the operational experience to run such systems at scale over time will not end well for a lot of people who start right now, because they simply lack the experience and will have to pay a learning curve price. That's going to be steep, number one. Number two example, in any enterprise, it's totally not okay that the summer associate sees the pay slip of the CEO, at least in my book of business. Now, here's the thing. If you go to ChatGPT, you get access to ChatGPT, but ChatGPT in itself does not discriminate between different user bases, or what is referred to as entitlements or access control. To put access control into that equation of a retrieval augmented generation stack ain't easy. Maybe the interview time is now too short to go into the details of it, but some of our largest deployments have about 10,000 user groups. Work out 10,000 user groups into a 12 million document index, where the average document size is 150 pages. So if you go and chunk this, you get terabytes of vectorized space that you need to maintain with properly updated entitlements to be absolutely certain that only people with access levels get to see what they're allowed to see. And this is hard. This is harsh. And I believe a lot of people completely underestimate this. That is leading, I think, in 25 to a lot of people disappointed. I think the smarter people will then move on and accept that this is the way it is, and then do, I hope so at least, do the right thing. That is, take the learnings in and then go ahead and think through how they can change business, because that's the last piece I want to lay out. I think the smarter people will use 25 to start to rethink, not with these kind of like smaller applications where it is faster, smaller, better, quicker, whatever, what I described with this customer support piece, but where they truly start to think about how they can reconfigure value generation for a company. That you're going to see as well in 25. The first companies that will use this as an opportunity to kind of like reconfigure the entire value chain that they operate in. Or with other words, you will see the first small elements of what possibly could become eventually the equivalent of Spotify in the music industry, but this time around across a wider range of industries elsewhere.
Okay, brilliant. I think that's a good quote. I like that quote. I think it's going to make my job easier. So you touched upon this earlier, but so what would you say companies should be wary of when trying to implement AI into their existing offerings?
A couple of things will come to mind. So I think what at the moment is there is lots of noise in the market. Everybody talks AI. Go to those clips on social media with all the big CEOs, CEO of Google, of Microsoft, Satya Nadella, Sanjay Pichai, and all the others. AI, everything AI. Right? How can someone who is not day in, day out in that industry even differentiate between the noise and the signal? So I think one of the toughest parts is for any managerial team that is not itself in that business to kind of like get up to speed without being kind of like drowned out by the whole noise level that is in that space. That's tough. Then the second thing, I think at the moment, there is a lot of misconception that there is this ultimate joy-fulfilling box that does everything and anything in one go. That's not the case. To make it simple and plain, if you have garbage data, you can apply as much AI to it, still going to be garbage data. There is no magic wand. So the second thing is all about, it's not that magic box, but it's about how to fit those pieces together, right? How to take a business case, or how to take a business problem that you really are able to kind of like split into the pieces and then go about it and make it better and easy, right? Because there's a lot of stuff that you need to kind of like end to end orchestrate. The RAG piece, the box in the middle, is actually the simplest piece. There is the entire data lifecycle. There is entitlement handling. There's reintegration into your enterprise elements. There might be regulatory elements that you need to kind of like observe that force you to guardrail the whole thing, data lineage, and. So it's a pretty complex beast, actually. It's not kind of like a magic box. Then I think most people completely misread the cost benefit equation. Just to make it super simple, a LLM compute, aka a GPU-based compute, is 10x, 20x more expensive than a CPU-based compute. That doesn't matter if you do a little pilot. Any company can afford a couple of $1,000, larger companies even a couple of $1 million. But if they go to full production and this couple of $1 million become a steady cost per month, eventually the CFO will come around and say, okay, what's the benefit? And many of these early pilots where you chat with your own employee manual will not pass that smell test. So most people don't think through the cost benefit element. And then what I described before, many people, because it's easy to get going, start to build that stuff themselves. I bet you're going to have lots of companies with literally a zoo of disjoint AI application that will cause more chaos than benefit. Then another piece is indeed that what I observe as well is because it's joyful to do, it's interesting, it's challenging. Many people think about, and I build a model, right? Data science teams, I build a model, wonderful. And they come up with the best prediction model, I don't know, for sales forecasts. But that's not sufficient. What happens if these people move on and they don't know how to recreate that model? You have a pile of unloved code. So at the end of the day, it's not just about the model. It's actually about how to build value on a consistent, long-running base. And that's not what's ingrained in those innovation teams. They want to do innovation now, and then there is a new shiny toy down the road in 2 years, right? Think about it. 2 years ago, 3 years ago, it was blockchain. Another 2-3 years ago, it was metaverse or in reverse order. It doesn't matter. There is always a new shiny toy. But the transformative effect has come if you do that over the longer term. Day in, day out, you consistently, as an example, reduce call center first resolution rates in terms of mean time to resolution and reduce the number of escalated such cases. That's the value, not the shiny board presentation. Yeah, then last, as I said initially, I think many people overlook the technical intricacies of the whole thing. It's a bit more complex, as I said, than a bit of vector database, a bit of LangChain, and a bit of an LLM, if you want to make that usable and applicable in the enterprise environment. Yeah, so ain't easy overall.
Yeah. So if you don't mind, I'd like to go back to Squirro and just
Yep.
see sort of how you sort of came to life, just how the origin behind the company.
Sure. Back in the mid-90s, we started building what became later on Switzerland's leading digital transformation agency by the name of Namix. We literally built the first web pages of the likes of UBS and Credit Suisse and so on. That company became the market leader in Switzerland and Germany eventually. And I co-run that job with one of the founders. We always did client engagements next to our managerial roles. And one of my client engagements turned into the next company where we digitized that local search space in Switzerland and build out what became Switzerland's largest web property at the time. This eventually got acquired by the incumbent telecoms company, Swisscom, and my team and I, it's always the same two founders for the last 25 years. Together with me, the three of us then moved on and founded what became Squirro. And where we right from start thought, if you want to make use of this treasure trove of information in any bigger enterprise or smaller enterprise for the matter, you need to have what I call a computational understanding of the data set in question. Right? If you simply store a Word document in a SharePoint, the SharePoint doesn't understand what's in the Word document. And Surge, by the way, doesn't understand either what's in the Word document. It only understands the sequence of letters and text elements in that document. But if you, as an example, want to do something like generate a automated answer to an inbound customer support request, you need to have a computational understanding of text. Then you can reply to it. So for the last 10 years, we've been building an enterprise level insights engine where we have started to integrate all types of machine learning techniques to do exactly that. And now with the advent of the large language models, we're a bit too small to build those. We have a field day because we can kind of like go back on a decade of experience of building such enterprise applications. That's how we came about. And obviously now it's an inflection point moment. Like I've seen that back in the 90s when we went and pitched to the UBS that the website would be a cool thing to have in 95. I remember that vividly. You know what they told us, the board of UBS at the time? Oh, no, we don't need a website. Money is trust. People don't trust the internet. People come to us into our branch offices. Harry, when have you been last in a physical branch office?
Not particularly recently.
Have you ever been in a physical branch office?
I have. I'm from a small town, so I've had to, but not it's not something I do on a daily basis, to say the least.
But you do banking.
Exactly. On a daily basis.
On a daily basis. That's an information in transformation. So, back to your question, this is exactly the same type of inflection moment. People for the last 10 years have been saying, oh, no, machine learning, that's a minority sport thing. We don't use that. We don't see the value of it. And now with the advent of things like ChatGPT, obviously, it's everywhere. And now happens what I've seen when the internet came about back in the 90s, that you start to see the fundamental changes, which we discussed in the last couple of minutes. I do think, though, as I said, with that, I don't believe chat will be the case. That makes it big. That at the moment, the noise, the chatter, and many of the pundits look into the wrong corner, right? And it's going to be slightly differently the development that many people think. And to give you an example, what I mean with that, right? With the advent of the internet and the advent of the first social media networks, by the name of High Five as an example, or what was it called, 7 Degrees or so, things long forgotten. Everybody thought this is the ultimate way to have a peaceful and wonderful and unified world. One big campfire place where we all come together, chit chat, and have a good time. If you go today on social media platforms of most of shapes, it's a cesspool of hate speech. That wasn't what they told us 20 years ago, 25 years ago. And in the same way, right, they told us, MP3s and so on. It's the free go for music, etc. It didn't really end up that way, right? So what I want to say with that is artificial intelligence revolution, I think truly it is one, as opposed as an example to the blockchain nonsense and the metaverse nonsense, is here to stay. But the consequences will be a bit different than what most people think. And the way to think about that is follow the money, right? So what I encourage all listeners or readers of that interview to do is follow the money in terms of the unit economics of any such application. That will determine what happens. And by the way, it explains to a good chunk why social media systems turn into a cesspool of nonsense and hate, right? it's signal over noise. You need attention of people. To have attention of people, it needs to be a daily 9/11 that captures the imagination and the attention of people. So you need, on a constant base, have people think, oh, if I don't get there and get the latest, I might miss out, and it's crisis and fear and anger and hate kind of like go out of control to place ads. All of these social media platforms run on ads. So you need eyeballs. So if you create a constant 9/11 type thing, you create good ad revenue. So follow the money, right? And that explains a good chunk why these social media platforms are the way they are. And in the same way, you can do that with the AI revolution. Follow the money, as in follow the money where the impact is in an enterprise. And you will see what the transformative effects are. And I just laid out one with this kind of like customer support case, but there is plenty more, right, of abilities to kind of like reconfigure entire value chains. And that element is the one that's interesting to see and how that develops.
I mean, you've covered really all my points, and you've done a pretty thorough job on it. So I'm very grateful there. It should be quite a nice piece to write. But my final question really for you would just be sort of, what's the meaning behind the name Squirro? Is there anything behind that?
You know a squirrel?
So is it the translation?
True. No, it's true. It's straightforward, right? A squirrel is a little animal that goes around places. It is sympathetic most of the times, and it collects acorns.
Yeah.
Nuggets of value, right? And it's the same we do. Now, Squirrel as a brand name doesn't really work because you can't protect it and you can't get the top level .com domains. So Squirro is an allegory on exactly this.
I like it.
That's how I came about.
That works. I'm glad I asked.
Yeah, sure. Anytime.